You deserve that. Those words just keep ringing in my ears, a sound that just won't fade. My name's Patricia Williams. I'm 59 years old, and this is the story I kept bottled up for months until I just couldn't take the silence anymore. That night at my son Marcus's wedding reception, his new mother-in-law Victoria threw a bowl of piping hot gumbo right in my face. I felt my skin sear, the spices burned my eyes. The thick soup dripped all down my ivory silk blouse. But what burned more than the gumbo was her smile, that calm almost. Satisfied smile she had on her face. She looked at me with narrowed eyes like she just did something she'd been waiting years to do. You deserve that, she said again, her voice firm, her chin held high. The whole banquet hall. Went dead silent. Every guest just stared down at their plate. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word, except for my son. Marcus, my only child, the boy I raised all by myself after his father walked out on us, the man I gave everything to. He just sat there at the head table, arms crossed, and said in this low voice, "She's right, Mama." I felt like the floor just opened up and swallowed me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I just took the linen napkin. From my lap, wiped my burning face with what little dignity I had left, and stood up from my chair. I didn't make a sound. I walked toward the big double doors with my back straight, even though every single part of me was shaking. But before I left that building, I did something nobody saw coming. I took my cell phone out of my purse. I dialed a number I'd saved weeks ago and said just 3 words, "It's time." Then I hung up. I closed the door softly behind me. No one followed me. No one asked a thing. I got in my car, started the engine, and as I drove, through the dark streets of Buckhead back to my quiet apartment in the West End, one question kept spinning in my head. How did I get here? Because there was a time when Marcus would hug me and say, "You're my hero, Mama." There was a time I believed a son's love was forever. There was a time I actually trusted people. But that night, with my face on fire and my heart broken into a million pieces, I learned something I never thought I'd have to. Sometimes the people you love most are the ones who stab you the deepest, and sometimes staying quiet is the only weapon you've got left. What happened after that phone call is something they will never, ever forget. But to understand why I did it, I'd have to tell you how this all started, how a mother who gave everything ended up completely humiliated in front of a room full of strangers, and how I found out way too late that my son was keeping a secret that would change everything. Sometimes we put too much trust in the wrong people. Have you ever been badly let down by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read it. 3 years ago, my life was different. Not perfect, but it was mine. I lived in a nice big apartment in the West End of Atlanta with a balcony packed with red geraniums and bougainvillea that I watered myself every morning. I had my routine. Strong coffee at 7 sweet potato pastries from Mr. Patterson's Bakery on the corner, and then I'd open my small tailor shop on the ground floor of the building. I wasn't rich, but I was doing okay. After Marcus's father took off on us when my son was barely 5 years old, I learned something a lot of women don't figure out for years. You can build a whole life with your own 2 hands and not ask a soul for permission. I made wedding gowns, prom dresses, and fancy blouses for the church ladies who like to look good without being flashy. My hands knew every single stitch, every hem, every little secret in a piece of fabric. And Marcus, he grew up watching me. He saw me get up at 5 in the morning to finish a job. He saw me sew until my fingers bled. He saw me crying from pure exhaustion over that old Singer machine my grandma gave me, and then just wipe my face and keep on going. "Mama, when I grow up, I'm going to work hard so you can finally rest," he'd tell me, looking at me with those big serious eyes while I made his breakfast. And I believed him. Marcus was always a good kid, responsible and so loving. He did his homework without me even asking. Always got good grades. On Sundays, he'd help me clean the shop and ask about fabrics, about colors, and how I knew what dress was right for each person. "Because I listened to them, baby," I'd tell him. "People always tell you what they need, even if they don't say a word." He'd nod like he really understood, and then go play basketball with the neighborhood kids. When he turned 18 and went off to study business at Morehouse College, I felt like everything I'd done had paid off. My son was going to have what I never did, a career, a degree, a future that didn't come with a sore back and numb fingers. I worked double, sometimes triple. I sewed dresses for weddings for families who'd never sit at a table with me, but they paid well. I saved every single dollar. I refused help. I refused loans because I wanted Marcus to finish school owing nobody nothing, and he did it. He graduated with honors and got a job at a big-time real estate firm. He started making good money, wearing sharp suits that I tailored for him myself. He'd bring me flowers every Sunday when he came for lunch. "Thank you, Mama," he'd say, and kiss my forehead. "I am who I am because of you." My life felt whole. And then he met Stephanie. The first time Marcus told me about her, I heard something new in his voice. This excitement, a sparkle in his eyes I'd never seen. "She's special, Mama, really special." Stephanie was the only daughter of some rich family from Buckhead. Her father owned a whole chain of hardware stores. Her mother, Victoria, was one of those women who had never worked a day in her life but sure knew how to tell people what to do. When Marcus said he wanted to introduce us, I put on my best dress, the navy blue one with the embroidery on the collar that I'd made for a cousin's wedding. I did my hair nice, put on the pearl earrings that were my mother's. I wanted to make a good impression. We met at some restaurant in Buckhead I never would have picked. Too fancy, too expensive. But Marcus insisted. "I really want you to get to know her Mama. Stephanie means a lot to me." Stephanie walked in wearing a perfect white dress and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was pretty and polite, but she was cold. We talked about nothing important, the weather, her job in interior design, the wedding she was already dreaming up, even though her and Marcus had only been together for 6 months. I smiled. I nodded. I asked all the right questions. The right things. But my stomach just twisted when she said, "My mom is dying to meet you, Miss Patricia. I've told her all about you." The way she said Miss Patricia felt so weird, like my name needed a title just to exist in her world. Marcus took my hand and squeezed it like he was trying to say, "It's all going to be fine, Mom." And I wanted to believe him. Back then I really thought a son's love was stronger than anything else. I still believed that what we'd built together, just the two of us for so many years, was unbreakable. I didn't know yet that some women see other women as the enemy from the second they meet. And I had no idea that Victoria had already decided, way before she met me, that I wasn't good enough for her family. That afternoon, when we left the restaurant, Marcus hugged me tight and said, "Stephanie loved you, Mom." He told me that in the car. I smiled, but deep down, a cold little voice whispered something I didn't want to hear. That girl is lying. And so is Victoria. 3 months later, they invited me to their house for dinner. That's when everything started to crack. Victoria's house in Buckhead was exactly how I pictured it. Huge, cold, and filled with stuff nobody needs. Crystal chandeliers, Persian rugs, oil paintings in gold frames. The furniture looked like it was straight out of a design magazine. So perfect you were scared to even breathe on it. When Marcus and I got there that night, Victoria met us at the door with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Patricia, how wonderful to see you," she said, giving me 2 air kisses that didn't even touch my cheeks. Come in, make yourself at home." But I didn't feel at home. I felt like I was trespassing. Stephanie appeared on the staircase, looking perfect in a pale pink dress that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. She greeted me with that same polite fake smile. "Miss Patricia, you look so nice." There it was again, Miss Patricia. Like my name needed that extra word that just made me feel old, like I was from another planet. Victoria's husband Richard was a big guy with a gravelly voice who barely shook my hand before turning back to his chair in front of the TV. He barely said a word all night, just grunted every once in a while and drank his scotch. Marcus seemed so happy, so comfortable, like that house was more his than our small apartment where he grew up. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. Dinner was served by a young housekeeper who moved in and out of the kitchen without making a sound, her eyes always on the floor. Victoria didn't even look at her when she asked for things. "More water and bring the bread." I tried to give the girl a smile when she served me. She gave me a quick, thankful look before disappearing again. The conversation at dinner was tense from the very beginning. Victoria talked about her country club friends, the vacation they were planning to Hilton Head, the new SUV Richard had bought. "Because you can't just drive around in anything, can you, Patricia?" she said with a little laugh. "One has to maintain a certain standard." I just nodded. I had no idea what to say. Stephanie jumped in, touching Marcus's arm like she owned him. "Mom, I already told Marcus that when we get married, he has to think about a bigger car. The one he has is so modest." Marcus laughed, but he was uncomfortable. "The car's fine, babe. It works for me." "But we're going to have kids, right?" Stephanie pushed her voice sickly sweet. "We need space, a safe place. Besides, my dad can help with the down payment." My stomach twisted into a knot. My son bought that car with his own money. I watched him work his butt off for it, and now this girl was talking like it was some piece of junk. I think Marcus knows what's best for him, I said, my voice quiet but firm. That's when Victoria actually looked at me for the first time all night. Of course, Patricia, Marcus is a very smart young man. That's why I'm sure he'll make the right choices for his future, for his new family. The way she said new family felt like a slap, like I wasn't part of that future anymore. Marcus said nothing. He just stared at his plate and kept eating. I realized something awful right then. My son was letting them push me away. Victoria kept right on talking. Now about the wedding. Stephanie and I are already looking at churches. The wedding's at the cathedral, of course. It's where my parents got married, my grandparents. The whole family. The reception will be at the St. Regis. Nothing too flashy, just elegant. Things need to be done the right way. Right? I just nodded, feeling my throat tighten up. No one had asked me anything. No one had included me. It was like my own son's wedding had nothing to do with me. And what do you think, Patricia? Victoria asked suddenly. She had that phony smile on her face. Do you like the idea? It sounds beautiful. I lied, forcing a smile. The important thing is that Marcus and Stephanie are happy. Exactly, she said, raising her glass. The important thing is that they're happy and they start off right, without any burdens. Without burdens. The word just hung there. It was like poison in the air. Stephanie got up to go to the bathroom. Richard had dozed off and Victoria took her chance. She leaned toward me, her voice low and sharp. Patricia, you seem like a reasonable woman, so I'm going to be direct. Marcus is a good boy, but he's used to a certain kind of life, a simple life. That's fine. But now, he's going to be part of our family, and our family has expectations. Expectations? I repeated, feeling my neck get hot. Yes, expectations. Stephanie needs stability, a husband who can provide, and Marcus needs to, a focus on his future, not on the past. Her eyes just stared right through me. The past, I whispered. Don't misunderstand me. Patricia, I know you've done a lot for your son. That's admirable. But now it's time for him to fly on his own, without, any strings, without emotional baggage. I felt like she'd just punched me in the stomach. I have never been a burden to my son, I said, my voice shaking. Of course not, she said, smiling. But now Marcus has other, priorities. I'm sure that you as a good mother will know when to step aside. I couldn't say a word. Just then Stephanie came back. Marcus just started smiling again like nothing happened. The housekeeper brought dessert, creme brulee. I didn't taste a single bite. When dinner was over, Victoria handed me a little box. A little something, Patricia, so you'll think, of us. Inside was a fancy china teacup, white with a gold rim, elegant, expensive, and cold. Thank you, I said without looking her in the eye. In the car on the way back to my place, Marcus was quiet. I was quiet too. When we finally pulled up to my building, he was the one who spoke first. So did you like Victoria? Mama. I looked at him, trying to see the little boy he used to be. The one who'd hug me and call me his hero. But that boy was gone. She seems like a strong woman, I said, picking my words carefully. Yeah, he said with a smile. She's incredible. Her and Stephanie are so close. It's nice to see. And us? I wanted to scream it. We're not close anymore. But I didn't say a word. I just got out, said goodbye with a quick kiss, and walked up to my empty apartment. That night, I was making some coffee in my old pot, just looking out at the city lights, and I held that cup Victoria gave me. It was beautiful, just perfect. But when I lifted it to my lips, I couldn't drink the coffee I'd just poured. Because that cup wasn't a gift. It was a message: you don't belong in our world. I left it on the table and went back to grabbing my old stoneware mug. The one I've used every single morning for years. That one was mine. That one knew my life. As I drank my coffee, a question started growing inside me like a weed. How far would this woman go to get me out of my son's life? I didn't know then, but I was about to find out. While I'm telling you this, I wonder where you're all listening from. Write your city's name in the comments. The next few months felt like walking barefoot on broken glass. Every step hurt, but I kept going, faking a smile and telling myself that everything would be fine. That this was normal when a son gets married, that I just had to learn to let go. But the truth is, they weren't letting me go. They were tearing me away. Marcus started visiting a lot less. He used to come every Sunday, no matter what. He'd show up with pastries. He'd help me move furniture to clean. He'd stay to eat and tell me everything about his week. But after that dinner at Victoria's, the visits became every other week then, once a month, then almost never, and it was always the same excuse. Sorry, Mama. Stephanie and I had plans with her family. Sorry, Mama. Victoria invited us to lunch at the club. Sorry, Mama. We have to deal with wedding stuff. Always Stephanie, always Victoria, always them. I'd say it was fine that I understood he was busy, but inside, something was slowly dying. Then one afternoon, Marcus called and said Stephanie wanted me to go with them to pick out her wedding dress. Really? I asked, and my heart just jumped. Yeah, Mama Stephanie insisted. She says you're an expert with fabrics and wants your opinion. For the first time in weeks, I felt a little hope. Maybe I'd been wrong about her. Maybe she did want to include me. Maybe this all just needed a little more time. On the day of the appointment, I got to the boutique a half hour early. It was a fancy shop in Buckhead, with dresses that cost what I made in 6 months. Stephanie showed up late, with Victoria and 3 friends who wouldn't stop laughing and taking pictures on their phones. Miss Patricia, Stephanie said, kissing my cheek, I'm so glad you came. We need your expert eye. I sat on a velvet sofa while she tried on dress after dress, all beautiful, all expensive, and all looking pretty much the same to me. Her friends clapped. Victoria ordered the sales assistant around, and I just sat there. I just sat there in silence. Nobody was talking to me. Then Stephanie came out wearing a French lace dress. It was strapless with a train that went on forever. What do you think, Miss Patricia? She asked, spinning in front of the mirror. Everyone's eyes were on me. I took a deep breath and just told her the truth. It's gorgeous, but I don't think the strapless style flatters you as much as it could. You have really delicate shoulders. A dress with lace sleeves or thin straps would show off your figure way better. The room went dead silent. Her friends stopped smiling. Victoria gave me an icy look, and Stephanie just let out this nervous laugh. Oh well, it's just that this is the style that's in fashion right now. Miss Patricia, I'm not sure if you're really up on the latest trends. Her friends snickered just loud enough for me to hear. Victoria stood up and put a hand on Stephanie's shoulder. Sweetheart, you look incredible in anything. Don't worry. This dress is perfect. We're getting it. Stephanie smiled relieved. Yes, Mama. You're right, Mama. Stephanie had called Victoria Mama, and she was still calling me Miss Patricia. I just sat on that sofa, feeling invisible while they all kept talking about veils and headpieces and fancy designer shoes. Nobody asked me for my opinion again when we left the shop. Marcus was waiting for us outside. Stephanie ran to him and started showing him pictures of the dress. Isn't it perfect? I'm going to look so beautiful, baby. You're going to be the most beautiful bride in the world, he said, kissing her. I just hung back, clutching my purse, feeling like I wasn't even there. Marcus finally saw me. How did it go, Mama? Did you like the dress? It's lovely, I said, forcing a smile. He said, thank you for coming. I know this is important to Stephanie and to you. And when I wanted to scream, it's not important to you that I'm here at all. But I just nodded. Of course, sweetie. That's what I'm here for. Victoria came over, took Marcus by the arm and said in a low voice, Marcus, will you join us for lunch? We need to talk about the final wedding details. Of course, Victoria. Mama is coming too, right? Stephanie asked, looking at me with this polite but totally empty smile. Before I could say a word, Victoria cut in. Oh no, dear. I'm sure Patricia is tired. Besides, we're just going to talk about some really specific planning stuff. We don't want to bore her. Marcus said nothing. He didn't defend me. He didn't insist. He didn't say, my mother is coming with us. He just gave me a kiss on the cheek and left with them. I stood on the sidewalk and just watched them walk away. And for the first time, I cried in public. Not a lot, just a couple of quick tears that I wiped away before anyone saw me. I took the bus back to my apartment. I didn't want to spend the money on an Uber. When I got home, I made coffee in my old stoneware mug. The same one I always use, the one that gets me. The china cup Victoria had given me was still on the table, untouched, just gathering dust. I stared at it for a long time, and something inside me just whispered, this isn't going to get better, it's only going to get worse. But I didn't want to listen. I still had this belief that a son's love was stronger than anyone else's influence. I still believed that Marcus was going to wake up, that he was going to realize what was happening, that he'd go back to being the boy who hugged me and called me his hero. So I just kept going. I kept smiling when they shut me out. I kept saying, it's okay when everything was wrong. I just kept swallowing it all. I just swallowed the pain so I wouldn't be a problem, so I wouldn't be a burden. I didn't want to prove Victoria right. She'd put that idea in my son's head. Your mother is going to smother you if you don't keep your distance. A couple weeks later, Marcus asked me to dinner. Just the two of us like the old days. I was so happy. I got there a half hour early. I'd really thought about what to wear. I put on a burgundy dress I'd made myself, with some simple embroidery on the collar. I just wanted my son to be proud of me. But when he got there, he wasn't alone. Stephanie was with him. "Sorry, Mom. Stephanie wanted to come along. Hope you don't mind." "Of course not," I lied. The whole dinner. Stephanie just went on and on about the wedding, the honeymoon they were planning in Bora Bora, and the condo her dad was buying them as a wedding gift. "It's in Buckhead, Miss Patricia. 3 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, and a terrace with an amazing view. My dad always says it's important to start off on the right foot." Marcus looked happy. I just smiled. Then the check came. Marcus pulled out his wallet and said something that just broke my heart. "Mom, can you lend me $2,000? I spent a lot on wedding stuff this month, and I'm a little short. $2,000. I didn't have an extra $2,000. I was barely scraping by to pay my rent and the shop's bills. But I took the money I'd saved for the power bill and emergencies, and I gave it to him. "Of course, honey, don't worry about it. Thanks, Mom. I'll pay you back next month." He never did. And I never asked for it back because right then I understood something awful. I wasn't his mother anymore. I was his bank, his safety net, his plan B. But I wasn't the most important person in his life anymore. That night I got back to my apartment and just sat by the window with a coffee, staring at the city lights. I wondered how I'd gotten to this point. How a woman who gave everything, her youth, her health, her whole life for her son could end up feeling so completely invisible. But I didn't know the whole story yet. I had no idea that everything that had happened so far was just the beginning. Victoria had a plan, and my son, my Marcus, my only child, was already caught in it. The wedding was getting closer like a storm I couldn't stop, and I just kept acting like everything was okay. Marcus would go weeks without calling. And when he did, the calls were short and distracted, just full of these awkward silences. "How are you, Mom?" "Fine, son. And you?" "Fine, fine. Busy with all the planning, you know. Anyway, I gotta go." "Stephanie's calling me." Click. And I'd be left holding the phone feeling like a little piece of me drained away every time. But the short phone calls weren't the worst part. The worst was not being invited to things. I found out by accident that Marcus had a bachelor party, a barbecue at Richard's house with a live band and all of Stephanie's family friends. Nobody told me. There was also a rehearsal dinner at some super expensive Italian restaurant with the wedding party and close family. Nobody invited me. When I finally asked Marcus why I wasn't included, he got all awkward. "Oh, Mom, it was just a small thing. Last minute. We didn't want to bother you." Bother me? Like I was an inconvenience, like I was some problem they had to avoid. But I kept my mouth shut. I kept smiling, kept saying, "Don't worry, son, I get it." But then one afternoon, everything changed. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays are always dead at the shop. I was just finishing a dress when the doorbell rang. I went and opened it. It was some young delivery kid in a blue hat holding a big brown envelope. "Patricia Williams." "Yeah, that's me." "Sign here." I signed it without even thinking. The kid handed me the envelope and took off. I shut the door and looked down at the package. No return address, just my name written in black ink. My stomach just dropped. I sat down in my chair, my hands shaking, and I ripped open the envelope. Inside there were photos, a lot of them. At first, I couldn't make sense of what I was looking at. They were pictures of Marcus, my son, in a bunch of different places. Restaurants, a parking garage, a hotel, but he wasn't alone. He was with a woman, and it wasn't Stephanie. It was Victoria. The floor felt like it was falling out from under me. The first picture was Marcus and Victoria leaving a restaurant. He had his hand on the small of her back. She was laughing, her head tilted back. The second one was in a parking garage. Marcus was opening the car door for her. Their faces were close, way too close. The third photo just knocked the wind out of me. It was them at the entrance to a hotel, the St. Regis, walking in together. His arm was around her waist. She was looking up at him with this smile I'd never seen on her before. A private smile. The kind of smile a woman gives when she knows a man's secrets. I dropped the pictures. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't hold on to them. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it was going to explode. No, this can't be happening. I fumbled to pick up the photos. I stared at them over and over, trying to find some other explanation. Maybe it was a business meeting. Maybe she just needed help with something. Maybe. But then there were more. More pictures. Marcus kissing her cheek way too close to her mouth. Victoria fixing his tie, her hands on his chest. The two of them going into some apartment I'd never seen. And the last photo. That's the one that made me let out this sound. A horrible sound. It was Marcus and Victoria on a balcony at night. He was hugging her from behind. Her eyes were closed, and she was leaning back into his chest like two lovers sharing a dirty little secret. I got up, stumbled to the bathroom, and just got sick. I threw up everything I had until there was nothing left but dry heaves and a disgusting taste in my mouth. I just stayed there on my knees in front of the toilet crying my eyes out. My son, my only boy, the boy I raised all by myself, the boy I gave my whole life to, the boy who used to call me his hero. He was sleeping with his fiancée's mother, a woman 20 years older than him, a woman who had put me down every chance she got. And just like that, it all made sense. That's why Victoria hated me so much. That's why she wanted me out of his life from the very beginning. It wasn't because I was poor or not fancy enough. It was because I was her rival. I'm his mother, the one who knew him before her, the one who could see what she'd turned him into. And that's why Marcus left me, not for Stephanie. It was for Victoria. For that woman who seduced him, who manipulated him, who turned him into her little toy. I stayed on that bathroom floor for I don't know how long. For who knows how long. Just crying, shaking, feeling my whole life fall apart. When I finally pulled myself together, I got up, splashed cold water on my face, and walked back into the shop. The pictures were still there, scattered all over the chair. I picked them up one by one. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The shock was turning into something else. Something cold, something hard, something I never knew was inside of me. I put the photos back in the envelope and sat at my sewing machine, just staring at the black thread. I thought about every single time Victoria put me down. I thought about every time Marcus acted like I wasn't even there. I thought about the wedding coming up, about Stephanie, that poor girl who had no idea her fiancé was with her own mother. And I thought about me, the woman who worked her fingers to the bone to give her son a better life. The woman who just took every insult and never said a word. The woman who actually believed a son's love was forever. Well, that woman was dead. And someone new was standing there. Someone who wasn't going to be quiet anymore. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I'd saved months ago. A client told me about a private investigator who helped her find out her husband was cheating. "Good afternoon, this is Patricia Williams. I need your services." The voice on the other end was all business, totally neutral. "Tell me how I can help you, Ms. Williams. I need more information. I need more proof. Dates, places, everything you can get on two people. Their names are Marcus Williams and Victoria Morrison." There was a pause. "Any relationship between them?" "Yes," I said, and my voice was steady now. "He's my son, and she's his fiancée's mother." Another longer pause. "I understand. And what do you plan to do with the information, Ms. Williams?" I looked out the shop window. The city lights were just starting to pop on. The sky was turning orange and purple. "I don't know yet," I said, "but when I do, I want to be ready. I'll email you my quote. And Ms. Williams." "Yes, some truths hurt more than the lie. Are you sure you want to know?" I closed my eyes. I thought of my son, the boy he used to be and the man he'd become. And I said something I never ever thought I'd say. It doesn't matter what hurts anymore. I need the truth. I hung up the phone, made a coffee in my stoneware mug, and I waited. Because now I knew that wedding wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. And I wasn't going to be the silent victim anymore. I was going to be the woman who knew. The woman who waited. The woman who at just the right moment would make one call and bring the whole thing crashing down. Have you ever kept a painful secret? Ever discovered something that changed everything? Tell me about it in the comments. The private investigator's name was David Thompson. He was about 50, a regular-looking guy with glasses and a calm voice that made you trust him. We met at a quiet coffee shop in Dakar, far away from anyone who might know me. He brought a thick manila folder, stuffed with papers, photos, and reports. "Ms. Williams," he said calmly, "I found what you asked for. But before I show you, I need you to take a deep breath." "I already know what I'm going to see," I said. I set my hands flat on the table. "No," he said, looking right at me. "Trust me, you have no idea." He opened the folder, and that's when my world really shattered. The first pictures were just like the ones from that anonymous envelope. Marcus and Victoria at restaurants, hotels, some apartment in Midtown that the investigator said she rented just for them. "This apartment is leased to a shell company," David explained. "But I traced the payments. They all come from Victoria Morrison's personal account." I felt sick all over again, but I made myself keep looking. There were hotel records, the St. Regis, the Four Seasons, the Ritz-Carlton. Rooms booked in her name, but security cameras showed both of them walking in together. "How long?" I asked, my voice sounding like a stranger's. David flipped through some pages and pointed to a date. The first record I have is from a year and a half ago. A year and a half. My son had been with his fiance's mother for 18 months, before he and Stephanie were even engaged, before I ever met that family. There's more, David said, his voice heavy. He showed me bank statements. Transfers from Victoria's account to Marcus's. Big chunks of money. $10,000 here, $20,000 there, $50,000 on one occasion. What is this? I whispered. Payments, David said. Your son is getting money from her, regularly. The word just hung there like poison. Payments. My son wasn't just having an affair with her. He was letting her pay his way. Is there anything else? Yes, David went on, and this part's messy. He pulled out another set of documents. I looked into the finances of Mr. Richard Morrison, Victoria's husband. He's bankrupt. That hardware chain that's supposed to be doing so well, it's about to go under. He owes a lot of money to several banks, and their house in Buckhead has 3 mortgages on it. I just sat there trying to process it. So it's all a lie, I asked. The wealth, the money, the status, it's all an act, David confirmed. A very well-built act, but it's falling apart. And I think Victoria knows it. That's why she's using her daughter. Using Stephanie how? David pulled out more papers. Stephanie inherited a lot of money from her grandmother on her mother's side 2 years ago. Close to $4 or $5 million in property and bank accounts. But that money is in a trust. She can't touch it unless certain conditions are met. What conditions? That Stephanie gets married. Once she's married, she gets full access to all of it. And if something were to happen to Stephanie while she's married, the money automatically goes to her husband. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Marcus, I whispered. Exactly, David said. If Marcus marries Stephanie and something happens to her, he inherits everything. And given his situation with Victoria, he trailed off. He didn't have to finish the sentence. Do you think they'd hurt Stephanie? I asked, a wave of fear washing over me. I don't have proof of that, David said carefully. But I do have proof that Victoria is a very controlling, very ambitious, and very desperate woman. And your son, Ms. Williams, forgive me for saying it like this, he's completely under her thumb. I closed my eyes. I thought about my Marcus, the little boy who used to hug me, the kid who graduated with honors, the man I thought I'd raised. When did he turn into this? When did he stop being my son and just become that woman's puppet? There's one last thing, David said, and it's the most important. He pulled out an audio recorder, a tiny little thing. I managed to plant a bug in the Midtown apartment. I know it's illegal, but I figured you needed to hear this. He hit play and I heard my son's voice. What if Stephanie finds out? It was Marcus. He sounded so nervous. Then Victoria's voice, so soft, so manipulative, both motherly and seductive. At the same time, she won't find out, my love. Stephanie's a fool. She only sees what she wants to see. But after we get married, how are we going to keep this up? That was Marcus. Then a pause. I heard sounds I didn't want to imagine. Then Victoria's voice came back firm. Stephanie won't be a problem for long. You marry her, wait a year, maybe 2, and then things happen. Accidents happen. Victoria, I can't. You can't what? You can't be happy. You can't have the life you deserve, Marcus. I love you. I love you. In a way, Stephanie never could. And when this is all over, it'll be you and me, together with all the money we need. No more hiding. Silence. And then my son's voice, so quiet I could barely hear it. Okay, I'll do what you ask. David stopped the recording. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even think. My son, my only son. The boy I raised myself, the boy I taught to be kind, to be honest, to have some dignity. And he was planning to marry a sweet girl just to get her money. And he was letting some psycho put ideas in his head that Stephanie needed to disappear. What are you going to do, Ms. Williams? David asked quietly. I looked at the photos all over the table. I looked at the papers, the bank statements. All this proof of a plan so twisted it felt like it was from some TV show. But this was real, and it was my son. I don't know, I whispered. I don't know what to do. You can go to the cops, David suggested. With this information, they can stop the wedding. They can investigate Victoria and Marcus. What would happen to my son? I asked, tears streaming down my face. David didn't say anything. We both knew the answer. Marcus would go to jail for fraud, for conspiracy, maybe even for setting up something terrible, if they could prove what he was planning. My son would be in prison for years, and it would be my fault. Just think about it, David said. And when you know what you want to do, call me. I'll be around. He gave me his card, paid for the coffee, and left. I just sat there in that coffee shop for hours holding that folder in my hands. It felt like my whole life was just turning to ash. I thought about going to the cops. I thought about talking to Stephanie to warn her to save her. I thought about confronting Marcus, yelling at him, asking him how he could turn into this, but I didn't do any of that because I needed more than just justice. I needed Marcus to see. I needed him to understand, to really feel what he'd done, and I needed Victoria to lose every single thing she'd clawed her way to, her games, and I had to do it so nobody could call me the bad guy. I wasn't going to be the mom who ruined her son's life. I was going to be the mom who let him ruin it himself. And then when he was at rock bottom, when he'd lost it all, maybe, just maybe, he'd remember me and who he was before that woman got her hooks in him. I grabbed the folder, stuck it in my purse, and walked out of that coffee shop with my head held high. The wedding was in 2 weeks, and I had a plan. It all started with me just accepting one thing. I was going to go to that wedding. I was going to sit right there, and when the time was right, I was going to make one phone call, and their whole world would come crashing down. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about fighting back. It's about letting the truth do the dirty work for you. The wedding night finally came. Everyone was expecting a storm, but not the one I was bringing. Because I knew tonight wasn't a party, it was a reckoning. I got dressed very carefully. I picked out a simple navy blue dress I'd made myself years ago. Nothing fancy, nothing to make people look. I put my hair up in a simple bun. I wore my mom's pearl earrings. I wanted to look respectable, because I knew this would be the last time Marcus ever saw me as his mother. The wedding was at the big cathedral, just like Victoria wanted. A beautiful church filled with white flowers and candles. There were over 200 guests, fancy people, rich people. People who gave me side-eye, wondering who this plain woman was sitting by herself in the 5th row. Because they didn't even give me a seat up front. Stephanie's family took up the whole right side of the church, and on the left, where the groom's family was supposed to be, there were just 3 of us. Me, some distant aunt of Orion's who hardly even knew him, and a cousin who was just there for the free food. That's all that was left of our family. When Marcus walked down the aisle, my heart stopped. He looked so handsome and grown up in a dark gray suit I knew he didn't pay for. His hair was perfectly combed, and he had this nervous but happy smile. For a second, just for a second, I saw my little boy again, and I almost backed out of my plan. Almost. But then I saw Victoria. She was right there in the front row, wearing a champagne-colored dress that just screamed money. Her hair was perfectly done, her jewelry sparkling in the candlelight. And when Marcus walked past her on his way to the altar, Victoria gave him a look I knew all too well. It was a look of ownership, like she was saying, "You belong to me." And Marcus, he shot me this little knowing smile right before he stood at the altar waiting for his bride. I felt sick to my stomach. Then Stephanie walked down the aisle with her dad. She looked beautiful, so innocent and happy. The strapless dress she picked, even though I told her not to, looked good on her. I had to admit it. Her face was just glowing. She had no idea. That poor girl didn't know she was walking right into a trap. The ceremony dragged on. The priest talked about love and being faithful. Every word was like a knife in my heart because I knew it was all a lie. When it was time for the vows, Marcus took Stephanie's hands and said, all serious, "Stephanie, I promise to love and respect you for the rest of my life. I promise I'll be your partner, your rock, your safe place. I promise to build a future with you." Based on truth and trust, I had to bite my tongue so I wouldn't just scream, "Liar, liar, liar." Stephanie was crying, all emotional. The guests were sighing, and Victoria had this smug smile on her face. When the priest said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," everyone clapped, except for me. I just watched. I watched them. Marcus kissing Stephanie, Victoria wiping away a fake tear, Richard nodding off in his seat. And I knew. It was time. The reception was at the St. Regis, a huge ballroom with thousands of white roses, tables with linen cloths, crystal centerpieces, a 5-course dinner, a live band. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. They stuck me at a table in the back, far from the head table, far from Marcus, with people I didn't even know. They didn't talk to me all night. I was invisible again. But I wasn't there to make friends. I was there to wait for the right moment. During dinner, I just watched. I saw how Victoria was running the whole show from her spot at the head table. How she gave quiet orders to the waiters. How she looked at Marcus every time Stephanie wasn't looking. And I saw Marcus give her those looks right back. It was disgusting. It was shameless. It was sick. When dinner was over, the dancing started. The first dance for the newlyweds, then the dance with the parents. Marcus danced with Stephanie first. Then it was his turn to dance with the groom's mother with me. I got up from my table and walked to the dance floor. Everyone was watching me. Marcus held out his hand with a forced smile. Mom isu, he said. Son, I answered, taking his hand. We danced in silence for a few seconds. The music was slow and romantic. Everyone was staring at us. You look beautiful. Mom, he said, not even looking me in the eye. Thanks, I said. You look good too. Another long silence. Are you happy? I asked him. Yes, he said, way too fast. Very happy. Really? Marcus, are you actually happy? For the first time all night, he looked me in the eyes and I saw something. Something small. Maybe it was guilt or maybe just unease. Yes, Mom, Stephanie is wonderful. We're going to be very happy together. And Victoria, I asked, lowering my voice, is she wonderful? Too. His whole body tensed up. He stopped dancing for a second, then started again, squeezing my hand tighter. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think you do, son. Mom, this isn't the time. Then when is the time? Marcus. When? After something happens to Stephanie, after you get your hands on her money. He stopped cold. He let go of me. He stared at me with these hard eyes. What did you say? I know everything, Marcus, everything. The music was still playing, but we weren't dancing anymore. People started to look over, whispering. You don't know anything, he said in a low, threatening voice. You're making things up. I have pictures. I have hotel receipts. I have bank statements. I have recordings. His face went pale. Mom, what did that woman do to you, Marcus? What did she do to turn you into this? You don't understand. He just blew up, raising his voice. You're never going to understand. The music stopped. Everyone was staring. Stephanie came running over, her wedding dress dragging on the floor. What's happening, Marcus? Mrs. Patricia? All of a sudden, Victoria was there. She got right between me and Marcus. Patricia, I think you'd better leave. Are you trying to make a scene? A scene? I shot back, feeling the anger bubble up inside me. I'm making a scene. Yes, she said flat out. This is my daughter's wedding, and I'm not going to let you ruin it with your drama. My drama? I laughed, but it wasn't funny. You want to talk about drama, Victoria? Stephanie just looked back and forth between us, completely lost. Marcus was just frozen. The guests were whispering, and it kept getting louder. And then Victoria did something I'll never forget. She turned to the closest table, grabbed a bowl of seafood gumbo that was still steaming hot, and walked straight at me. Then she threw it right in my face. I felt the hot soup burning my skin, the spices and broth dripping all down my dress. The pain, the humiliation. Everyone gasped. Stephanie shrieked. Someone ran to get napkins, but I didn't move an inch. I just stood there with soup running down my face, staring Victoria right in the eye. She just smiled, this calm, smug smile, and said loud enough for the whole room to hear, "That's what you deserve." The room went dead silent. And then Marcus, my son, my only son, the boy I raised all by myself, just crossed his arms and said, "She's right, Mom." Those words cut me deeper than any knife. Stephanie was sobbing. The guests were all whispering. Richard was still passed out in his chair, and me. I just grabbed a napkin from the nearest table and wiped my burning face with what little dignity I had left. Then I walked toward the ballroom exit, with my back straight. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. But right before I walked out, I pulled my phone from my purse, dialed a number I had saved, and said just 3 words. It's time. I hung up, left the hall, got in my car, and drove through the dark streets back to my apartment. With my face on fire and my heart shattered into a million pieces, I smiled, because the call I'd just made wasn't to the cops. It was to someone else, someone who was about to change everything, and they would never, ever forget it. I still ask myself if I did the right thing. What would you have done? I got back to my apartment. My dress was ruined, and my soul felt even worse, but I didn't cry. I had no tears left to cry. I took off that soup-soaked dress and threw it in the trash. I never wanted to see it again. I took a long hot shower, letting the water just wash over my stinging skin. When I got out, I put on my old cotton pajamas, the ones with holes in the elbows. The ones I've had for years, the ones that were mine and nobody else's. I made coffee in my stoneware mug, the same one I always use, and sat by the window to wait, because I knew that call was going to have consequences. Consequences that would start that very night. The person I called wasn't the police. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't anyone who could throw my son in jail. No, it was someone much more powerful than that. It was Stephanie's grandfather, William Harrison, Stephanie's mother's father, the man who had left those millions in a trust for his granddaughter. An 82-year-old man, a widower, a retired businessman, One of those guys who built an empire from scratch, and who had zero tolerance for lies or betrayal. I had met him a few months. It was at one of the few family get-togethers they'd actually invited me to. Just a casual lunch at Victoria's place. I was keeping quiet in my corner, invisible like always when William sat down next to me. "You're the boy's mother, right?" he asked. His voice was raspy but kind. "Yes, sir. I'm Patricia." "Patricia," he repeated like he was testing out the name. "Pretty name. And what do you do, Patricia?" "I have a sewing shop. I make dresses, do alterations." "Ah, you work with your hands like me." "I like that. People who work with their hands have soul." We talked through that whole lunch. He told me all about his life, how he started out selling tools from a truck and ended up owning a hardware chain all over the Southeast. He told me how he worked 14-hour days for 50 years, how he'd been a widower for 10 years and still missed his wife every single morning. "My daughter Victoria doesn't visit me much," he said sadly. "She says I'm old, that I smell old, that my house is full of junk." "I'm sure she loves you very much," I said, just trying to be nice. "No," he shot back, brutally honest. "My daughter loves me for my money, but I don't have any money anymore. I left it all to my granddaughter Stephanie, because she actually visits me. She actually hugs me. She still has a heart." He gave me his card that day. "If you ever need anything, Patricia, you call me. I like people who work with their hands." I kept that card in my wallet, and 3 weeks after I got those photos, I called him. We met at his house, an old craftsman bungalow in Inman Park, filled with antique furniture and family pictures. He had strong coffee and pastries ready for me. "Tell me, Patricia, what's so urgent?" I showed him everything, the photos, the bank statements, the recordings, the papers proving the whole setup. William listened in total silence. His face changed colors, first pale, then red, then purple with rage. When I was done, he was quiet for a long time. "My granddaughter is in danger," he finally said, his voice shaking. "Yes, sir." "And your son, he's part of this plan." "Yes, sir." "So why are you telling me, why don't you go to the police?" Then it took me a second to answer because I had to be honest. Because if I go to the police, my son goes to jail, and as much as he's betrayed me, as much as he's become someone I don't even recognize, he's still my son. "I can't be the one to put him in prison," William nodded slowly. "But I can be," he said. "I just want Stephanie to be safe," I replied. "And I want my son to understand what he's done, to see the consequences, to feel the weight of his choices. And Victoria, I want her to pay for what she's done, for manipulating my son, for putting him on this path, for planning to hurt an innocent girl." William took my hand in his old hands, the ones full of spots and wrinkles, but they were still strong. "Patricia, you're a wise and brave woman. I'm going to help you, but I need you to promise me something." "Anything." "Patricia, when this all blows up, and believe me, it is going to blow up, you are going to suffer. Your son is going to hate you. People are going to talk. You're going to be alone." "I'm already alone," I said calmly. "No," he replied. "You still have hope, but when this is over, that hope is going to die. Are you prepared for that?" I thought of Marcus, of the boy he used to be and the man he'd become, and I said, "Yes, I'm prepared." William nodded. "Then this is what we're going to do. You are going to go to that wedding. You are going to behave. Just act normal. When they finally show their true colors, you call me. I'll do what has to be done." "What's the first thing you're going to do?" "I'm getting Stephanie out of that house tonight. I've got lawyers. I've got doctors. I'm going to prove my daughter isn't fit to care for her own child. I'm going to get a restraining order. And the money that trust gets frozen right away. Neither Stephanie nor anyone else will touch a penny of it until a judge decides. And believe me, with the proof we have, the judge is going to side with me." And Marcus, William looked at me sadly. "Your son won't go to jail because technically he hasn't committed a crime yet. He's just a fool who let some con artist play him. But he's going to lose everything. The marriage, the money, the family, his reputation. He's going to be left with nothing." "Good," I said firmly. "That's exactly what he deserves. And that's how we got to this very moment. Me sitting in my apartment drinking coffee, just waiting. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. It was William. "It's done. Patricia." "What happened?" I showed up at the St. Regis with my lawyers and 2 police cars. I told Stephanie I needed to talk to her, that it was urgent. When she saw the pictures, when she heard the recordings, she passed out cold. We had to take her to the hospital. My God, is she okay? Physically, she's fine. But emotionally, that girl is destroyed. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. Patricia, it's my daughter's fault, and that son of yours' fault. What happened with Marcus and Victoria? Marcus tried to explain it away, tried to say it was all a lie, but when he saw the proof, he just shut up. He stood there in his tux, surrounded by guests who were whispering and pointing at him, not saying a word. And Victoria, that woman. William's voice was full of disgust. That woman tried to deny all of it, said the photos were photoshopped. The recordings were fake, that it was a whole setup against her. Did they believe her? Of course not. The scandal was huge. Guests were running for the doors. The hotel staff had no idea what to do, and Richard, that useless man, slept right through the whole drama. And now Stephanie is with me. We're going to annul the marriage. It was the same night, so legally it's like it never even happened. The trust is frozen, and I filed a complaint against Victoria for fraud, extortion, and for planning to have someone taken out. Is she going to jail? God willing, yes. The lawyers say we have a rock-solid case. Thank you, William. Thank you for protecting Stephanie. No, Patricia, thank you for warning me in time. You saved my granddaughter's life. There was a long pause. And your son? William asked. Do you want to know about him? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Tell me. He left the hotel at 2 a.m, all alone. The guests just stared at him like he was dirt. No one defended him. No one helped him. He just got in his car and left, and I have no idea where he went. I understand. Patricia, your son lost everything tonight. How do you feel? How did I feel? Empty. Sad, relieved, guilty, and vindicated all at the same time. I feel at peace, I said finally. Because I did the right thing? Yes, William replied. You did the right thing. Not many mothers would have that kind of strength. Strength. We hung up. I just sat there by the window holding my empty mug in my hands. Outside, the city was still going. Lights, noise, people living their lives, and I was just here alone. But my conscience was clear. This wasn't about revenge. What I wanted was justice. Justice for Stephanie because she didn't deserve to be used. Justice for me because I didn't deserve to be humiliated. And justice for Marcus, who needed to learn that actions have consequences. I didn't throw him in jail, but I left him with absolutely nothing. No money, no family, no reputation. And maybe, just maybe, when he finally hit rock bottom, when he'd lost everything and was completely alone, he'd remember who I was and what he was like before Victoria's poison got into his head. That night I slept like a log for the first time in months. No nightmares, no anxiety, no more of that awful knot in my stomach that I'd had since I got those first photos. I had done what I had to do, not out of rage and not because I was thirsty for revenge, but with a clear head. I understood that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their own choices, even if it means watching them crash and burn, even if it means losing them forever. The days after the wedding were strange and silent, like the world had just stopped. I heard nothing from Marcus for a whole week. He didn't call, he didn't text, he didn't come looking for me, and I didn't look for him either. Because I knew he needed time to figure out what happened, to process just how much he'd lost, and I needed time to heal. William called me every 2 days to give me an update on how things were going. Stephanie was in intensive therapy, not psychiatric, but emotional. She'd fallen into a deep depression after she found out the man she married was sleeping with her own mother. It's just too big of a betrayal, William told me. It's too twisted. My granddaughter can't wrap her head around how it could happen, and neither can I. How is she? Fragile. Very fragile, but she's 18. She's young. She'll get through this. With time, she'll heal. The scandal spread like wildfire through the whole city. Social media exploded. Somebody had recorded part of the showdown at the St. Regis and posted it online. The video went viral in hours. Marcus leaving the hotel by himself, his suit all wrinkled, his face a total wreck, Victoria screaming at William's lawyers, Stephanie getting carried out on a stretcher. People were commenting, speculating, making up all kinds of theories. Some said Marcus was the victim, that Victoria had seduced and manipulated him. Others said he was an opportunist, a gold digger, a guy with no morals. The truth, as always, was somewhere in the middle. Marcus wasn't completely innocent, but he wasn't completely guilty either. He was a weak man who'd made horrible decisions because he didn't have the guts to say no. By the second week, William had more news. The DA took the case against Victoria. They were going to formally investigate her for fraud and conspiracy. How likely is it she goes to jail? I asked. With the proof we have, very likely. The recordings are all they need. The lawyers say she's looking at 8 to 15 years. 15 years. For Victoria, the woman who she humiliated me, manipulated my son, and planned to hurt her own daughter for money. She was going to pay. And Richard, that poor man, supposedly knew nothing. Just a drunk who's been cut off from his family for years. The cops confirmed he wasn't in on the plan, but now he's all alone. His wife's on her way to jail. His daughter hates his guts, and his business is bankrupt. Is he going to lose the house? He already lost it. The bank foreclosed last week. Now he's in a rented room in Dakar on some pathetic pension. I didn't feel sorry for him, though. Richard had eyes, he had ears. He had been in that house for years watching his wife destroy lives, and he never did a thing. Sometimes, doing nothing is just as bad as pulling the trigger. In the third week, Marcus finally came looking for me. He showed up at my apartment at 8 at night without any warning. He knocked real soft. When I opened the door, I almost didn't recognize him. He hadn't shaved in days, had deep dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled and his hair was a mess. He'd lost weight. He looked completely destroyed. "Mama," he said, his voice cracking. I just stood in the doorway, frozen. "What do you want?" "Marcus, I need to talk to you." "We have nothing to talk about. Please, Mama, just let me in." I hesitated. A part of me wanted to slam the door right in his face, tell him to get lost, that he wasn't my son anymore. But another part, the part that held that boy in my arms, that sang him to sleep, that cleaned his scraped knees, that part just couldn't say no. I let him in. He sat in the chair in the shop, the same one where I'd gotten the first photos, where everything started falling apart. "You want coffee?" I asked, just out of habit. "No thanks." I sat across from him and waited. Marcus took forever to speak. When he finally did, his voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Mama." "What are you sorry for?" "Everything. Everything I did to you. And Stephanie?" "Are you sorry for her too?" He nodded, tears just rolling down his cheeks. "Yes, especially for her. I didn't want to hurt her. I never wanted to." "But you did." I cut him off, my voice cold as ice. "You planned to marry her to steal her inheritance." "I heard the recording, Marcus. I know what you said." That wasn't me talking. It was Victoria. "You're going to blame Victoria for your decisions. She manipulated me." "Mama, she made me believe that I was worthless without her, that you raised me to be average, that I deserved more." Its every word was like a knife. "And you believed her." "Yes," he whispered. "I believed her." "Why, Marcus? Why did you believe her and not me?" "Because she gave me what you never could." "Money, right?" "Well, yeah, but it wasn't just that. She gave me attention. She made me feel important. She made me feel like I was special." "I made you feel special too." "No, Mama, you made me feel guilty." I just stared at him. "Every time I came to visit you, I saw your tiny apartment, your old clothes, your tired hands. And I felt guilty for having more than you. Victoria never made me feel guilty. She told me I deserved everything I had." I was quiet, taking in his words, and then I understood something terrible. My son hadn't pushed me away out of hate. He left me because he couldn't stand to remember where he came from. I was a mirror showing him his poverty, his humble roots, everything he wanted to forget. And Victoria offered him a way out, a chance to be someone new, someone important, someone who didn't have a mom who sewed for a living, reminding him of his past. "You know what the saddest part of all this is, Marcus?" I finally said. "It's that I never tried to make you feel guilty. You felt guilty all on your own because deep down you knew you'd abandoned me." "I know I've been a monster. I know, Mama. And I'm so sorry. Where have you been these past few weeks?" "Cheap hotels, blowing through what little I had left. I lost my job. Nobody will hire me. My name's all over the internet. I'm a total joke. And that house Richard was supposedly giving you, it never existed. The whole thing was a lie. The hardware stores are bankrupt. The house in Buckhead is in foreclosure. There was never any money, just debt. And Victoria's in jail, waiting for her trial. Her lawyers say she's probably going to get 10 to 15 years. Good, I said, and I meant it." Marcus looked at me, his eyes all red. "Don't you feel anything for her? Why should I? That woman ruined her own daughter. She twisted you up. She humiliated me. She planned to have someone taken out. Why would I feel anything for her because I loved her?" Those words cut right through me. "No, Marcus, you didn't love Victoria. You were obsessed with what she stood for. Power, money, status. That's not love." "Maybe you're right." We just sat there in silence for a long time. Finally, Marcus asked the question he came here to ask. "Can I stay here, Mama? Just for a few days until I find a job? Until I can get—" "No," I said firmly. "Mama, please. I've got nowhere else to go. I don't have any money. I have— You should have thought about that before." "Mama, I'm your son." "Yes," I cut him off. "You are my son, and that's exactly why I'm saying no. Because if I let you stay here, if I bail you out now, you'll never learn. You'll never understand the consequences of your choices. Then, what am I supposed to do? Sleep on the street? I want you to do what I had to do when your father left us. I want you to get up, get a job, and rebuild your life with your own 2 hands. No shortcuts. No games and not depending on anyone but yourself. I can't, Mama. I'm not strong like you. Then you better learn to be." Marcus got up from the chair. He looked at me with this mix of hurt, anger, and desperation. One day you'll forgive me, Mama. One day you'll... Maybe I cut in, but today's not that day. Not tomorrow, not next month, maybe in a few years, or maybe never. That's all on you. It depends on who you decide to be from now on. And if you change, if you actually become a better person, then maybe, just maybe we can talk again. But not as mother and son. We'd be like two strangers who have to learn to know each other all over again. Marcus just nodded, crying. He walked to the door, opened it, and turned back one last time. I love you, Mama. I know I said, but love doesn't mean a thing without respect. Then he left. I closed the door and just stood there listening as his footsteps faded down the hall. I didn't cry. There was nothing left to cry about. I'd done the right thing. The hardest thing, the most painful thing, but it was the right thing. That night I was just drinking coffee from my stoneware mug, looking out the window. I thought about everything that went down, about how Victoria, who always thought she was so powerful, so smart, and better than everyone, ended up alone in a jail cell. And Richard, who spent years hiding in a bottle, lost every single thing he had. Then there's Marcus, who would have done anything for money and status, and he ended up with nothing. No cash, no family, no respect for himself. And then there's me, the quiet one, the seamstress, the mom nobody ever listened to. I'm still here, in my little apartment with my shop, my tired hands, and my old mug, but I have something they never had. Peace. 'Cause life always comes to collect. Not with a big fight, not with getting even, but with time. With patience. It's a quiet kind of justice that shows up when you're not looking. Victoria called me crazy once. Now, years later, I know she's all alone in that cell, just staring at the walls. No visitors, no love, nothing. And I wonder if now in that awful emptiness she finally gets what she lost. It wasn't the money or her status. It was her own soul, everything that actually makes life worth living. And Marcus, my poor Marcus, maybe one day he'll get that being rich isn't about what you own. It's about who you are. It's about how you treat people. It's about owning up to your mistakes. But that day hasn't come yet for him. And I can't wait around for it. My life, my one precious life, is moving on with or without him. It's been 2 years since that night. 2 years since I watched my son walk out of my apartment with no money and nowhere to go. 2 years since I decided the best way to love him was to let him deal with the mess he made. And in these 2 years, I've learned things I never thought I'd have to. I've learned that being quiet can be stronger than screaming, that you don't bargain with your self-respect, and that forgiving doesn't mean you forget. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just let someone you love go. My life has changed. Not in a big flashy way. I didn't get rich. I didn't buy a big house. I still sew. But it changed where it really counts, deep down in my soul. I still live in my apartment over in the West End. I still work at my shop. I still make my coffee every morning in the same old mug I've had for years. But I don't feel invisible anymore. I don't feel small. I don't let anyone make me feel like I'm not enough because I figured something out. Something really important. A person's value isn't about how much money they have or what neighborhood they live in, or who they hang out with. A person's real worth is if they can stay on their feet when everything falls apart. It's about if they can do the right thing even when it's hard. It's about being able to forgive yourself for not being perfect. William's become a really good friend. He stops by to see me every 2 weeks. He always brings pastries from his favorite bakery. And coffee he makes himself at his old house in Inman Park. We just sit in the shop with all the scraps of fabric and spools of thread, and we just talk about life, about what it was like raising kids when times were tough, about how much it hurts to watch people you love go down the wrong road, and how getting older teaches you that in the end, the only thing that matters is being able to look in the mirror and be okay with the person you see. Stephanie asked about you last week. He told me on his last visit. I was surprised. How is she? Better, a lot better. She finished therapy last month, started studying psychology, says she wants to help other women who've gone through what she did. I'm so glad to hear that. She wants to meet you, Patricia, says she wants to thank you for saving her. I felt a knot in my throat. I didn't save her, I just did what I had to do. That's exactly what saving someone means. William replied with a sad smile, doing the right thing even if it costs you everything. Stephanie came to visit me one October afternoon. She just showed up all alone and knocked softly on the shop door. When I opened it, I almost didn't recognize her. She wasn't that fragile, scared girl I saw at the wedding anymore. Now there was something different about her, something stronger, more grown up. "Miss Patricia," she said quietly, "can I come in?" "Of course." "Honey, come in." She sat in the shop chair, the same one Marcus had sat in 2 years ago. I made her some coffee. We made small talk for a few minutes about the weather, her classes, how she liked living with her grandfather. Then she finally got the courage to say what she came to say. I want to thank you for everything you did. You don't have to thank me for anything, Stephanie. Yes, I do, she insisted, her eyes filling with tears. You saved my life, literally. If you hadn't called my grandfather, if you hadn't done something, I did it because it was the right thing to do. Because you're a good girl who didn't deserve what they were doing to you. My mother, her voice broke. My own mother planned it. She planned it. I know, honey, I know. Stephanie cried for a long time. I just sat beside her and stroked her hair like I would with my own daughter. Because in that moment she needed a mother, a real mother, not the one she had but the one she deserved. How did you get over it? She asked me once she'd calmed down. How did you keep going after everything that happened with Marcus? I took a deep breath. It wasn't easy. There were nights I wanted to call him, to rescue him, to tell him everything was fine and he could come home. But I knew if I did, he would never learn. He would never change. And has he changed? I don't know, I admitted. 6 months ago. He wrote me a letter. He told me he got a job at a factory, that he's living in a small room in Norcross, that he's going to therapy, that he's trying to be better. Did you reply? No, not yet. Why? Because I need to be sure he's changing for him. Not for me. I need to know he's doing the hard work on himself that he has to do, and that takes time. Stephanie nodded thoughtfully. I'm doing that work too. In therapy, I learned I can't blame myself for what my mom did. That it wasn't my job to know something was wrong. That I was just a girl who trusted the wrong people. Exactly, I said, taking her hand. And now you're a woman who is learning to trust again, but this time in the right people. Starting with yourself. Stephanie stayed the whole afternoon. She helped me sew the hem of a wedding dress. She told me about her plans to open a support center for women who've been through abuse. And when she left, she hugged me tight and whispered in my ear, "Thank you for being the mother my own mother never was." That night I cried, not from sadness, but from something more complicated. I had lost a son, but in a way I had gained a daughter. Not by blood, but by heart. 3 months ago I got some news about Victoria. William called me one morning and his voice was heavy. "Patricia," he said, "I need to tell you something about Victoria." "What happened?" I asked. He told me she got 12 years in prison with no chance of parole. "Is she a wreck?" He said she's in really bad shape. Nobody visits her, not even Richard. She's all alone. Then he asked how I felt about it. I told him I was relieved but also sad. I mean, she's still my daughter. And after everything she did, a part of me still remembers the girl she was before all that ambition twisted her. I knew exactly how William felt because I also remembered the boy Marcus used to be before the world got to him, before all his bad choices took over. And I wondered if he could ever be that boy again, or if that kid was gone for good. Then, 2 weeks ago, Marcus's letter came. It was longer than the first one, more honest. He really opened up. He told me he'd started going to a support group for people who'd made big mistakes. He said he was learning to live with the guilt without letting it destroy him. He told me he was saving every dollar so he could one day pay me back all the money he took. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Mom," he wrote. "I don't expect us to go back to how we were. I just hope that someday if you see me on the street, you won't cross to the other side to avoid me. I just hope you know that every day I wake up trying to be a better man than I was yesterday. And every day I think of you, of how I treated you, how I failed you, and how I let a woman convince me you were the problem when you were the only person who ever really loved me. Sometimes I walk past your building. I don't knock. I don't come up. I just stand there on the sidewalk, looking up at your window, wondering what you're doing, if you're sewing, if you're drinking coffee, or if you ever even think of me. And then I leave because I know I don't have the right to bother you. I have no right to ask you for anything else. But I want you to know something, Mom, something I never told you enough when I should have. Thank you. Thank you for raising me by yourself. Thank you for sacrificing so much. Thank you for giving me opportunities you never had. And thank you for having the guts to let me fall when I needed it most. Because now I get it. You didn't let me fall because you hated me. You did it out of love. And that was the greatest gift you could have given me. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you even when my actions said something else. Your son, Marcus. I read that letter 5 times. I cried every single time. Then I put it in the drawer where I keep all my important things, right next to Marcus's first baby picture, next to his graduation diploma, and next to a note he wrote me when he was 8 years old that said, "Mom, you are my hero." I haven't written him back yet, but I think I will soon. Because I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering what happened, feeling that pain, and still choosing to move on without carrying all that weight in your heart. It doesn't mean I'm going to forget. It doesn't mean things will ever go back to the way they were. But it does mean I'm ready to build something new, something different. A relationship based not on what we were, but on who we can be now. We can be. You know, last night I had this dream. I was sitting in my shop sewing and I heard a knock on the door. I went and opened it, and it was Marcus. But not the Marcus from today or the one who betrayed me. It was the little boy. My boy with his big eyes and that innocent smile. He said, "Mama, I lost my way, but I think I found it again." And I just hugged him and cried and said, "Welcome home, son." When I woke up, there were tears on my cheeks, and I just knew that dream was a sign. Not that everything was fixed, but that I was ready to start healing, to start forgiving. Not just Marcus, but myself too. For not being the perfect mother, for not protecting him from everything. For not seeing the signs sooner. Because the truth is, nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We all hurt the people we love. We all get lost sometimes, but it's not our mistakes that make us who we are. It's what we do after. Do we learn? Do we grow? Do we get back up? Or do we just stay on the ground blaming everyone else for our fall? This morning I was making my coffee in my stoneware mug and I looked out the window. I saw the streets of Atlanta filling up with people. People rushing around, people with problems, with dreams, with pain. And I realized we're all in the same story. A story about messing up and making things right, about falling down and getting back up, about losing things and finding them again. And my story, the one I've been telling you, it's just one out of millions. But it's my story. And I'm proud of it, because I survived. I didn't break. I held my head high when everything around me was falling apart. And because I learned that real strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting up every single time you do. Now I'm 61 years old. That's 2 years older than when this whole thing started. And I feel like I've lived a whole lifetime in just these 2 years. I'm still sewing wedding dresses for girls who dream about forever love. And every time I sew, I think about Stephanie and her strapless dress. How on that day she thought she was starting the best part of her life. And I pray that someday, when she's ready, she finds a real love. A love that really sees her, respects her, and values her. Not for her money or her last name, but for who she is. And I pray for Marcus, because after everything, he's still my son. And a mother never stops praying for her kids, even if they hurt her, even if they betray her, even if they make her cry until she has no tears left. A mother's love doesn't have limits. But I know now it shouldn't have conditions that let people walk all over you either. Love has to be strong, honest, and brave. Love has to tell the truth even when it hurts. It has to set boundaries, even when it's hard. It has to let go even when you want to hold on. Because that's the only way, with that tough, brave kind of love, that you can help those people you love be the best they can be. If my story helps just one woman open her eyes, if it helps one mother understand that loving doesn't mean letting them get away with anything, if it helps one person choose their self-respect over just keeping things comfortable, then all of this was worth it. Every tear, all the pain, every sleepless night, every hard decision. Everything. Because this story isn't just about me. It's for all the women who've been put down and have chosen to stand up for themselves. For all the mothers who had to let their children go just to save them. For all the people who've been betrayed and chose to forgive but not forget. This story is for you, the one listening right now. For you. Maybe you're going through something just like this. For anyone out there who doesn't know if you can survive the pain you're feeling right now, I need you to know something. You can. You're going to make it because you're stronger than you think. You've got more courage than you can even imagine. And pain, no matter how awful it feels, doesn't last forever. Time heals things. It doesn't erase what happened, but it helps. And one day, maybe in a few months or a few years, you're going to wake up and realize that just breathing doesn't hurt so much anymore. That thinking about it all doesn't break you anymore. That you can look back without it tearing you apart. And that day, you'll understand that you survived, that you won. Not because you destroyed the person who hurt you, but because you didn't let them destroy you. I'm ending this story holding the same old stoneware mug, the one that's been with me for years. The one that knows how my coffee tastes on the really hard mornings. The one that's held my tears and my hopes. The one that's never let me down. Because in the end, it's the simple things that are always there. The most humble things are the strongest, and the things people ignore are the most valuable. Like me, like you. Like all the women who were underestimated and then proved they were made of steel. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. And remember, what goes around comes around, not through revenge, but with truth, with time, and with a quiet kind of justice. And in the end, good always wins. Always. Maybe not the way we expect, and maybe not when we expect it, but it wins. Because people can't escape the consequences of what they do. Did you like the story? And what city are you listening from? Let's meet up in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep making more stories like this one. Thank you so much for your awesome support. I'm really looking forward to your comments. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I really recommend. There's a lot more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.